So my name is Nicole, and I graduated from Rentwell last month, and I started the program in December.
I'm Haley White. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Medford, Oregon.
It was more accessible because I was actually houseless, so it was really beneficial to be able to do it on my phone because I was in and out of shelters. So it was awesome because it was easy to navigate and pop in and out of as I had time, or if there was a lot going on, I would just pause it and go back.
The online format definitely worked best for me. They gave me the time frame, so I knew from the beginning what my physical goal looked like as far as how long I had to accomplish it. And the fact that I could do it at my own pace was exactly what I needed. I honestly don't feel like I would have been able to accomplish it if I wasn't able to just set aside a little bit of time. And I did the program from my phone. I never even got to the point of using a desktop, which I thought was going to be tedious, and then ended up just kind of making things faster and more accessible. So I was really appreciative of the online program.
I think physically meeting with a facilitator for people who don't have any prior knowledge. I had some prior knowledge. I learned a lot, but I think if I was like in reentry services, or I was, like had a really like traumatic thing happening, I think that meeting with somebody in person and having that personal touch would really help. I used to work in finance and the banking industry, so I'm really comfortable like diving deep on the phone and asking a lot of uh, detail oriented questions. And so I got lucky because my instructor, William, he was very receptive to that. Like I had an hour long conversation with him, and, was able to ask him and go deep into questions with him. And he also made me feel comfortable asking those questions. And so I feel like some people don't have that skill. So if they don't, being in person and being able to like ask those questions, or feel comfortable doing that, I think is huge.
Potentially just accountability for people that are struggling to really start the program. I think I was in a unique position where supported by my partner and we had both educated ourselves about the program. And so he was really my accountability partner, making sure that I was getting it done and staying the course. So that could definitely be a benefit for people that don't have someone like that that's aware of what's going on daily.
I think the knowledge that I gained, and also um, just knowing that this is a resource for others, was huge for me because I've shared it with everybody. Um, and when you're spending 15 hours of your own personal time to do these things, like it really helped because it clarified some of the things I didn't know about. You think that you have an understanding, but they actually dove really deep into it. And so, even if your understanding was clear, you didn't really have a lot of questions afterwards. It was kind of like filling those gaps of things that I hadn't experienced or that I thought I was knowledgeable about.
I honestly think the biggest I mean, there was definitely just a big feeling of like I had completed something, I had proven it to myself. I had chosen to prioritize my housing needs and that next step in life, and just the fact that I had actually finished it within the correct time frame was definitely a huge sigh of relief. But I would have to say that the greatest feeling for me with completing the course was actually just my correspondence with the team members, because I had finished the course a little bit early, and within like a week and a half before the end date, we had gotten our call back from the housing authority in our area that a unit was available and that applications were due. And so I was like, I know that you guys don't have my certificate yet, and it's gonna take a few weeks to process, but I need it now." And so they all pulled together and were literally so incredible. Raymond specifically was the one that I was corresponding with back and forth, and there's now probably 45 emails between us. He did absolutely everything he could and got it to me in the perfect time, and we were approved for the apartment, and when I had let him know, and he was so excited for us, and so it was really just like the warmest feeling of community that I just didn't expect.
Houselessness. I was fleeing some pretty serious domestic violence, and I had rental barriers. I've never had that before. I'm a disabled adult because I was in a bad car wreck right near the airport about 8 years ago. It really helped me understand that like this is normal. A lot of people have this happen. So I think just having it as a resource and being able to educate myself, it was something I could control.
I would honestly just have to say overall lack of confidence and lack of education. I just didn't know what I was getting into. By 21, I've lived in probably 8 different places since I moved out of my parents' house, and none of them had I, scouted out, put in an application, and then been put on a lease as an individual. So I was really overwhelmed with what that process would look like and the challenges that it would bring, and just um very undereducated, and the Rentwell program gave me so much more than I had expected. I was obviously using it as an incentive for myself, and for my future, landlord, and I didn't realize how much it was going to educate me and give me the confidence to navigate getting in an apartment, and it kind of just gave me this clarity that it will happen eventually, and it's going to be sooner than later. And so to continue to make preparations and treat it like it's happening now, and it truly did just fall together.
Absolutely. I think again, it goes back to having that sense of control and feeling like if nothing else is working out, at least you're working towards something that's going to benefit your future. And it kind of also makes you feel more at ease about the barriers. And then the other thing, too, I would say is because you have to have three recommendation letters, it's kind of like you have to uh, uh, you get to hear people brag about you a little bit. And when you're feeling low like that, it's a huge deal to get a letter saying like, "Hey, I recommend this person to rent because of whatever the situation is." It feels more like a superpower than a barrier or like an issue.
Absolutely. Um, I think that you tend to underestimate yourself, when you don't have a lot of rental history, or maybe you have poor rental history, or your credit is bad, whatever the reason, as like the smaller person that's not the landlord, you tend to build up these barriers around yourself and convince yourself that you can't do it and that it's impossible and that there's so many other better candidates than you. And what I felt like this program did for me was teach me how to be the student in the classroom that might not get the best grades, but is going to try the hardest. And the teacher is going to see you, and that you're proving yourself, and somebody will see you for your effort and you will make it in. You are taking that extra step that most people would never take. And I think that that gives you confidence in how you want to navigate your future, and I think it shows your future landlords that there's something in you that isn't in everybody else.
So I gained knowledge about the application process and how to um, when you get a denial, how to handle that, how to find a place that works well for you, even when you feel like desperate. Because a lot of times it's like, okay, I'll live anywhere because I don't want to be on the street. But the reality is that if the landlord isn't going to work as hard for you as you are for them, then it's not really a good match. It kind of helps you when you go through that process, it helps you understand, like, is this somebody who is understanding of what's going on, or is this somebody who's just going to turn me away and, um, not discuss my problem or talk about, what it is that I can do to overcome.
Rentwell helped us because we obviously received our applications to get into the housing authority, and one, it helped me navigate how to fill out that application and what they were really asking of me, what they would need to know, what they would expect from me if I were to get the keys, how I should navigate the process once I've gotten the keys, during our showings, yada, yada. I definitely feel much more educated in that process in a way that I didn't know that I needed to be educated and no one had ever kind of told me about in the past. And secondly, they were able to get my certificate in time, which I'm able to get to my landlord. And I think that definitely is making a big impact on us being accepted into our unit, especially because it's a brand new build. And I think that sometimes you might not want to have high risk renters in a brand new build. And because we have that guarantee, and because I've taken the extra step as a renter to educate myself and said, hey, I'm going to do this for you if you'll do this for me. I think Rentwell is definitely a big part of the reason why we have been allowed into that renting community.
I think a huge one for me that I didn't really understand is protected classes. Um, it helped educate me on where in the state there are protected classes and why I was struggling in rural areas to find places to live. Um, there's a huge disconnect because you kind of feel like, um, like in a metro area, it's there, the diversity is there, the culture is there, the understanding is there, and, they recognize protected classes. In rural areas, like I grew up in a rural area, I was seeking housing in a rural area, and it just wasn't going to happen for me because there aren't those same, they're not as knowledgeable. They don't understand, um, they don't recognize those things. And so I think learning about that and understanding how I fit into that or how it could impact me, that was the hugest thing is like I was looking for places rurally that were just looking at me on paper and not taking me seriously. Um, Even though I have a really strong background, I have barriers. So, be going outside of those areas and seeing how people are understanding and how they get it and how they recognize when you're applying what you've done and what you're still trying to do to overcome what's happened, whether it's in your control or not. That was huge for me. Also, alongside that, there was a lot of extra information. It didn't necessarily pertain to me, but it pertains to others around me. When it comes to protected classes and also just like diversity, inclusion, and how that fits into the housing market and things like that. It was huge to understand that. To give you an example, I'm not sure if I'm saying this term correctly, but there's a term called disparate impact, and it talks about how Native people have the highest incarceration rate. And I didn't realize that because of the statistics you're taught in the world, and in our society and culture, you don't necessarily understand those things. But it was really cool because I started to learn little tidbits like that. That's just one of them that I'm like, oh, well, if you understand what this is, then you can talk about the impact. You know what I mean? And how it impacts a person. And so those little things that they touched on in the courses helped me really understand like I'm not the only one. And, I may fall into like I'm disabled, so I fall into a protected class that I didn't know about, you know?
I would probably have to say the legality of things. What is actual, and this was definitely a heavy subject and one that was sometimes hard to keep myself focused in. But things would constantly catch my attention again where I would go, "Oh, I'm gonna want to know that." So as far as when I'm filling out paperwork, what paperwork to request, what is my landlord allowed to do and say to me and why, definitely opened my eyes in some ways that were scary that I was like, I can't believe I didn't know this. This is how major catastrophes happen with people's lives and they lose their apartments. So it gave me huge insight on what I'm allowed to do as a renter and what my landlord is allowed to do to me. And I feel like that just gave me a lot of confidence for how I will navigate my future property.
I think the most impactful thing is how to appeal a denial, like what that looks like and how it can impact you, and how you can actively like impact your results positively by just by doing that. I didn't know. Like I've gotten a denial before and I didn't know what to do with it. So that was huge because when you're putting your all in your effort into applying for a place and you get that denial, you just kind of feel like you're not worthy. And so knowing how to pick up from that and ask people to work hard for you to overturn that, that's like the biggest takeaway that I had. And my instructor and the letters, like there's a cover letter, there's the reference letters, those things, learning about those and how they help you, and working alongside with William, it was huge.
I think one of the most impactful things that I was learning about was when they were describing why you could potentially be kicked out of a unit, and why and when a landlord can potentially not rent to you. And I think I was just surprised by what was legally allowed. And it definitely just gave me some clarity about how I would like to handle myself professionally in a renting situation because it just seemed like there were these small little gap areas where if you were just a little too loose and didn't have the right conduct, you could definitely put yourself in a position to be denied over something really silly. So I think that was something that I didn't expect to resonate with me so heavily and always be in the back of my mind.